Something good just happened. You just didn't hear about it. Better side of the world.
You know, if you look at your phone right now, the notification screen probably looks like some kind of, I don't know, hazard warning.
Oh, yeah, completely.
Like red alerts, breaking news, just a constant barrage of overwhelming and, let's be honest, usually negative information.
Yeah, it is. It's exhausting.
It really is. And
Yeah.
it's so incredibly easy to feel like you are just, standing in this wind tunnel of panic, just getting blasted by one crisis after another.
Well, and human psychology simply isn't built to process a new global crisis every 5 minutes.
Right.
When you're subjected to that kind of barrage, it triggers our fight or flight response, like constantly. Your brain just narrows its focus to immediate threats.
Which means you literally can't see the big picture.
Exactly. We lose the ability to step back and see the broader context of what is actually happening in the world.
Which is exactly why we're here. I mean, that is our mission for today's deep dive. We are stepping out of that wind tunnel for a bit.
A much-needed break.
Seriously. So we've gathered a very specific stack of reports covering just 1 week, the first full week of May 2026, so May 3rd through the 8th. And we're really asking one central unifying question as we look through all these sources.
And it's a big one.
It is. How do massive global breakthroughs actually provide tangible hope for our daily lives, like for you listening right now?
And to set the analytical tone for our discussion today, what's truly fascinating here is that true progress isn't just about an isolated scientific win over here or a random conservation statistic over there.
It's the whole board.
Right. It is about connecting the dots. When you look at medical advancements, environmental restoration, and human connection all together, you stop seeing random events.
You see a pattern.
Yes. You start seeing a very clear, undeniable signal of global improvement.
So let's start unpacking this by looking at the human body itself, because we've got a report here from May 8th out of Imperial College London that the sources are calling a massive game changer.
It really is a game changer.
It's a new blood test, right? But it uses RNA markers. Now, I think most of us have a vague idea of DNA, but how exactly does an RNA test change the game for someone who's actually sick?
Well, it's a really great distinction to make. If your DNA is like the architectural blueprint for your body, your RNA is the contractor on the job site, actively reading that blueprint and giving orders.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Right. So DNA tells us what might happen to you, but RNA tells us what is actually happening in your cells right this very second.
Oh, wow. So it's real time.
Exactly. Real time.
Yeah.
And the researchers at Imperial College have figured out how to use these RNA markers to predict not just how a disease will progress, but exactly how a patient will respond to specific treatments.
That's incredible.
They focus heavily on conditions like inflammatory bowel disease, which, are notoriously difficult and complex to manage.
Let me try to put this in perspective for everyone. Think about the current state of medicine for complex diseases. For a lot of people, it's like trying to unlock a door in the dark with a massive keychain.
Oh, that's a perfect way to describe it.
Right, you're just fumbling. You try one key, then the next, waiting to see if it turns. You take a heavy medication, you wait 6 months, you suffer all the side effects.
And then you find out it didn't even work.
Exactly, and then you just move to the next key on the ring. But this new RNA test, it's not just, turning on the hall light so you can see the keys.
No, it goes further than that.
Yeah, instead of trying every key in the dark, the RNA marker is like reading the manufacturer's serial number printed right on the lock itself. Your blood is literally transmitting the exact blueprint of how your specific body will react to the drug before you ever take a single pill.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. The mechanism here is profound because it completely bypasses the traditional trial and error phase.
Which is brutal for patients.
It's horrific. The trial and error phase of medicine isn't just a matter of clinical inefficiency. It is a period of immense psychological anxiety and physical suffering for the patient.
Right, waiting to see if you're going to get better.
Exactly. So by forecasting the treatment response through RNA, you eliminate that agonizing waiting period. You're transforming healthcare from a stressful guessing game into a highly personalized, targeted roadmap.
Speaking of roadmaps, let's pivot to a different area of health that has essentially been a pitch black hallway for decades. Alzheimer's.
Yeah, this is a big one.
We have a major pipeline review that was released on May 5th. And it shows a 40% surge in potential new Alzheimer's drugs over the last decade.
Which represents a massive structural shift in neurological research. I mean, a 40% surge is not incremental. That is a tidal wave of new data and new approaches.
Wait, hold on, though. Let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
A 40% surge in a pipeline sounds great on paper, right? But whenever I hear the word pipeline in medicine, I instantly think, decades away.
Sure, absolutely.
So for you listening right now, if you have an aging parent, does this actually mean anything tangible, or is it just theoretical math for scientists?
It's a vital question because, frankly, false hope helps no one. But let's look closely at the facts from the source material. The reason this surge is tangible is because of where these drugs are targeting the disease. Okay, what do you mean? Well, historically, Alzheimer's research focused heavily on late-stage symptom management. Trying to salvage function once severe cognitive decline had already set in.
Right, treating the damage after it's done.
Exactly. What is entirely different about this current pipeline is that researchers are now testing treatments for every stage of the disease. They are specifically targeting the accumulation of amyloid plaques and tau proteins years before symptoms even appear.
Oh, wow. So it's not just managing the decline anymore. They're actually trying to stop the whole cascade from starting in the first place.
Precisely. This structural shift toward early intervention points to a future where Alzheimer's could be treated kind of like high cholesterol.
Really? Like
Yeah.
high cholesterol?
Yeah. You identify the risk early, you take a targeted medication, and you prevent the catastrophic event entirely.
Yeah.
The so what here is the immense psychological relief this offers to aging populations.
It totally flips the script.
It fundamentally changes the narrative of aging from one of inevitable cognitive decline to one of proactive preservation.
But, having a map to treat a disease is totally useless if there's a toll road the patient can't afford.
That is the unfortunate reality, yeah.
Incredible RNA tests and preventative Alzheimer's drugs are amazing breakthroughs, but they only provide hope if everyday people can actually get their hands on them. This is where policy really has to catch up with science.
And that is exactly what we're seeing in the data out of Mexico this week.
Right. A major policy shift reported on May 6th. Mexico officially pledged to provide free universal health care to all citizens, actively replacing their older, heavily fragmented systems. Now, I want to be very clear here, looking strictly at the data from the reports. This isn't framed as a political move or an endorsement of any ideology. The source material frames this as a structural healthcare solution designed to remove bottlenecks.
Right, particularly to ensure equitable access for the elderly and vulnerable populations.
Exactly. We aren't taking a political stance, just reporting how the sources view this as a massive win for social progress.
And that is the crucial connection to make, because scientific breakthroughs require a delivery mechanism to actually benefit humanity. A fragmented healthcare system acts as a massive bottleneck, basically keeping the cure locked in the laboratory.
Right, the key is trapped in the lab.
Exactly. What the source material is highlighting is that removing those systemic barriers is just as much a medical breakthrough as discovering a new RNA marker. Equitable access is the bridge.
It's what turns a theoretical laboratory success into daily, tangible hope for millions of people.
Beautifully said, yes.
So we're figuring out the mechanics of the human body, and we're improving how we get treatment to that body. But let's zoom out a bit. Let's transition from treating the internal human body to healing the external environment that, directly dictates our health.
Because, quite frankly, you can't have a healthy person living on a sick planet.
You cannot. Planetary health and human well-being are entirely, inextricably linked. The water we drink, the air we breathe, these dictate our baseline health long before we ever need an RNA test.
Which brings us to a May 3rd study published in the journal ACS Omega.
Yes, this one blew my mind.
Oh, it's incredible.
It's about the moringa tree. Now, I had literally never heard of the moringa tree before reading this week's stack of reports.
Really, it's actually quite famous in various tropical and subtropical regions. It's often referred to locally as the miracle tree due to its incredible nutritional value and numerous medicinal applications.
Well, it definitely earned the title miracle tree this week. This study confirmed that seeds from the moringa tree can remove up to 98% of microplastics from water.
98%. It's staggering.
Right. But how does a seed pull tiny, invisible shards of plastic out of a glass of water? I mean, what is the actual mechanism there?
This is where it gets truly fascinating. The solution to this highly complex modern industrial problem Microplastics infiltrating our water systems is an entirely natural biological process called flocculation.
Flocculation, okay.
Yeah, moringa seeds contain specific, naturally occurring proteins that carry a positive electrical charge.
Okay, so they're electrically charged.
Right. And microplastics, generally speaking, carry a negative electrical charge in water.
Ah, opposites attract.
Exactly. So when you crush these seeds and add them to contaminated water, those positively charged proteins act like billions of microscopic magnets. They attract and bind to the negatively charged microplastic particles.
So they stick together.
Right, causing them to clump together or flocculate into larger, visible masses that can be very easily skimmed or filtered right out of the water.
That is wild. It's basically a natural, incredibly low-cost Brita filter for the entire planet.
It really is.
Think about what this means for water filtration in developing nations. You don't need to build a multi-billion-dollar, high-tech, energy-intensive reverse osmosis plant. You just need to plant trees and harvest the seeds.
Exactly. It completely bypasses the need for resource-heavy, expensive interventions. It proves that nature often already possesses the sophisticated technology required to clean up our industrial mistakes if we simply take the time to study it rather than trying to engineer our way around it.
And more importantly, if we give nature the actual space to do its thing. Which leads perfectly into a massive dual-continent conservation milestone reached on May 8th.
Yes, the Land Conservation Report.
Right. Across both the U.S. and Australia, it was reported that private landowners have officially placed 85 million acres of their own property under conservation protection.
Which raises a very important observation about the actual mechanics of global progress. We frequently assume that meaningful environmental protection requires, sweeping government mandates or massive international treaties that take decades to negotiate.
Right, the endless summits where nothing seems to get signed.
Exactly. But this 85 million acres milestone proves a fascinating counter pattern. Private citizens and local landowners are stepping up and leading the charge where governments sometimes lag or get caught in bureaucracy or simply lack the funding.
It is a highly effective, decentralized approach to saving the planet.
It really is.
It's people looking at their own backyards, granted very large backyards in this case, and deciding to protect it themselves. And the data shows that when we actually do that, when we just get out of the way, the results are staggering.
Oh, absolutely.
Look at the Saiga antelope in Kazakhstan. The Global Rewilding Alliance celebrated a massive success this week. The Saiga antelope has rebounded from near extinction. They were down to under 50,000 animals to over 4 million.
From under 50,000 to over 4 million. The sheer velocity of that ecological recovery is astounding.
I really want to help you visualize that scale for a second. Imagine a sold-out baseball stadium. That is about 50,000 people. That was the entire global population of this species on Earth.
A single stadium.
Right. Now imagine a massive, sprawling metropolis like Los Angeles, but made entirely of antelope. That is 4 million. How does an entire species bounce back from a baseball stadium to Los Angeles so quickly?
It happens because nature is aggressively resilient. It operates on a principle of biological momentum.
Biological momentum. I like that.
Yeah, when we remove the artificial negative pressures we've introduced, whether that is targeted poaching, industrial agriculture, or habitat destruction, and we simply give a species the geographic space it evolved to occupy, the ecosystem bounces back with an incredible vitality.
Just takes over.
Right? The Saiga, in particular, often give birth to twins. So once the poaching stopped and their migration routes were secured, their population geometry just exploded. It provides immense hope because it proves that environmental damage is not always a permanent one-way street.
We're going to actually fix it.
We can reverse the trend, and sometimes it happens much faster than we dare to hope.
So what does this all mean for us, the humans living in these ecosystems? We've talked about human biology and wildlife habitats, but let's talk about human habitats, how we actually share our public and global spaces.
Yes, moving from the preservation of environmental ecosystems to the intentional design of our social ecosystems.
Exactly. Over in Europe, after more than a decade of delays, Prague and Copenhagen have finally been reconnected by a direct high-speed rail line, the Vindobona service.
A very exciting development.
Now, obviously, taking a train instead of flying is great for carbon savings. We know the environmental math on that. But the sources are hailing this as something much deeper than just an emissions win.
It represents a fundamental shift in how we perceive travel, time, and cultural connection.
It completely changes the psychology of the trip. The sources focus on how this is about bridging European cultures through slow, scenic travel. It impacts our daily pace of life.
It's a completely different experience.
Right. It's the difference between being shoved through airport security, treated like cargo, and fired through the sky in a cramped metal tube versus sitting down with a cup of coffee, looking out a massive window, watching the landscape change, and actually experiencing the physical space between two cities.
You aren't just enduring a commute.
No, you're reclaiming that time for yourself. It is direct investment in personal well-being.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of the week's news, it reflects a growing cultural desire to prioritize the quality of our shared public spaces and our mental health over mere speed and economic efficiency.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we are seeing this prioritization of public health over corporate interests in several other major ways this week.
Yes, two huge examples of this stood out. First, the city of Amsterdam officially banned all advertisements for fossil fuels and meat in their public spaces. Subway stations, bus stops, billboards, they just pulled the plug.
A huge move.
And simultaneously, all the way down in the country of Ghana, they officially declared a massive new marine protected area.
And just as we did with the healthcare policy earlier, we need to look at how the source material impartially frames these events.
Yes, very important.
The reports position Amsterdam's ad ban and Ghana's fishing regulations as explicit community actions that prioritize long-term planetary health and local livelihoods over short-term corporate interests.
Right. We aren't making a judgment on the policy itself, but we are accurately reflecting how the provided text interprets the motivation behind these events.
Precisely. It's about what the community is prioritizing.
And the Ghana story is incredible to read because this new marine protected area didn't just happen by magic or because a politician woke up feeling generous. It was the result of years of intense grassroots campaigning by local fishing communities.
They were the ones driving it.
They were fighting industrial overfishing to protect their own livelihoods. They understood that protecting the ocean's biodiversity wasn't just an abstract environmental goal, it was the literal survival of their local economy.
And if you synthesize those two events, Amsterdam redesigning its visual public space and Ghana's local fishermen protecting the physical ocean, a very powerful recurring theme emerges.
That grassroots action works.
Yes, we are seeing grassroots, community, and city-level actions driving global progress. It's not always top-down mandates. Often the most effective, lasting change starts at the local level.
With communities deciding what they value more.
Exactly. Deciding between pervasive corporate advertising and industrial extraction, or a healthy environment and sustainable local economies.
It's people standing up and saying, this is our space, this is our home, and we're going to take care of it.
Which is incredibly empowering.
It is. Which brings us to our final and maybe most important point of this entire deep dive. We've zoomed way out today. We've looked at massive macro-level global stories, 85 million acres of land, national healthcare overhauls, high-speed international rail lines. But let's bring it all the way down to the microscopic, deeply personal level. Let's talk about the neurochemistry of the individual.
The biology of kindness.
Yes. This week included World Kindness Day in several regions, and the reports highlighted multiple psychological studies looking into a phenomenon called the helper's high.
Such a fascinating concept.
Alongside the science, there was this viral story out of Scotland about a teenager who spent his entire afternoon just helping an elderly neighbor navigate up and down a broken lift in their apartment building. Just a simple, quiet act of neighborly care.
But underneath that simple, quiet act is a profoundly complex biological mechanism. These psychological studies show that when we engage in small acts of kindness, it triggers a very specific neurochemical response in the brain.
What happens?
It releases a flood of oxytocin and serotonin.
Which are the body's natural feel-good chemicals, right? They lower stress, they lower blood pressure.
Precisely. And what is vital to understand here is the evolutionary design behind this. These chemicals are triggered in both the giver and the receiver.
So everyone benefits biologically.
Yes. The profound implication of this biology is that human beings are literally physically wired to feel good when we help each other. Evolutionarily speaking, a cohesive, cooperative tribe is much more likely to survive than a fractured, selfish one.
That makes total sense.
So our bodies evolved to reward us with a chemical high when we act pro-socially. It is a biological advantage to be kind.
Let me just connect the dots here for you, because when I read that, it was the absolute aha moment of the whole week's stack of reports. Think about everything we've discussed today.
It all ties together.
It does. Whether it is brilliant scientists at Imperial College London dedicating their lives to developing an RNA test to stop a patient's suffering, or private landowners in Australia deciding to protect 85 million acres of wildlife habitat,
Oh?
or local fishermen in Ghana fighting for years to protect the ocean, or just a teenager in Scotland helping an old woman with a broken elevator. It is all driven by the exact same fundamental human impulse. We are biologically driven to care for one another. That is the true signal.
It really is. The noise of the world, the hazard warnings on our phones, they constantly tell us that we are fractured, divided, and inherently selfish.
But the reality is different.
Very different. The signal, when backed by biology, sociology, and actual scientific achievement, tells a much more accurate story.
It tells us that we're actually getting better at this. We're getting better at taking care of our own bodies, taking care of each other, and taking care of the planet we share. So, to wrap up our deep dive today, when you zoom out and look at all these incredibly diverse sources from the first week of May 2026, from moringa tree seeds magnetically pulling microplastics out of drinking water, to researchers stopping Alzheimer's before it starts, to communities reclaiming their public spaces, it creates a beautifully cohesive picture.
A picture of real progress.
Yeah. It's a picture of a world that, despite the chaotic notifications buzzing in our pockets, is stubbornly moving forward.
And it leaves us with a fascinating, almost science fiction level question to consider as we close.
Oh, I love these.
Well, if our individual biology naturally rewards us with oxytocin for small, one-on-one acts of kindness today, imagine the evolutionary impact of these systemic changes over centuries.
What do you mean?
Well, if we are actively curating a world where equitable healthcare, clean environments, and protected ecosystems become our daily baseline, we might actually be rewriting human DNA to select for collaboration over competition. What does a human being look like 1,000 years from now if the old adage, survival of the fittest, fundamentally transforms into survival of the kindest?
Wow. Survival of the kindest. That is an incredible thought to walk away with. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep seeking out the signal through the noise. And remember, the next time you feel like you are fumbling in the dark with that massive keychain of terrible news, there is always a light switch waiting to be flipped. We'll catch you next time.
This has been Better Side of the World. And somewhere tonight, something good is still happening.